She is straightening things on the table that don't need straightening. The salt shaker is where it always is. She is 58 years old and her life, by every measure she knows how to apply, is good. Her son calls most Sundays when he remembers. Her husband makes coffee before she wakes. The house is the one they bought together 30 years ago, and the garden has finally become what she always imagined it would be, more or less. She is not unhappy. She is careful to know the difference. But at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, when the light through the kitchen window flattens and goes gold, something returns. Not a memory, not a feeling she can name, something older than both. She straightens the salt shaker, she smooths the edge of the placemat, her hands find their work. There is a particular kind of suffering that doesn't announce itself, it doesn't arrive with an event. No moment you can point to, no person to hold responsible, no story that ends with an explanation. It arrives at the same hour, it has the same weight, and because it comes so reliably, so quietly, you have long since stopped asking what it is. You have given it a place at the table. The salt shaker is where it always is. Chain, not the dramatic kind, not the ones you can see or point to or break in a single moment of decision. The quiet kind, built one unexamined assumption at a time until it has the weight of fact. The kind you stop noticing because it moves when you move. The aphorism calls it enslaved. This episode calls it what it looks like from the inside, chained, not overpowered, bound by something agreed to before you knew you were agreeing. A relationship with experience so early, so quietly established, that it became the shape of experience itself. Here is what that looks like. The same kind of person disappoints you again. A different face, the same gesture of withdrawal, and you absorb it the same way you always have. You find the right category. You move on. It looks like resilience. From the outside, exactly like someone who has learned from experience. What it does not look like is what it is. Ignorance here is not the absence of information. She has read, she has reflected, she has thought carefully about her life. Ignorance is misrecognition, taking the pattern for the person, taking the response for the truth, believing that what returns at 5 o'clock is simply what she is, not what she learned to do with something that was never fully received. The chain is not made of pain. It is made of the belief that the pain is load-bearing. And as long as that belief goes unnamed, the chain holds, not because it is strong, but because it has never been looked at. At her son's wedding, 2 years ago now, she still thinks of it. She sat through the ceremony with her hands folded in her lap and felt something she could not account for. Not sadness, not envy. Something quieter. A recognition without an object. On the drive home, her husband reached across and held her hand on the passenger seat. The car was dark. She watched the road. She filed it unremoved by the occasion. She moved on. But the feeling hadn't finished. She had. Something arrives before any thought can form. It is not an idea, not a memory. It is a subtle shift in state, as if the room loses a small margin of possibility. She does not name it, but the body recognizes it. Sometimes it is the light on the table, sometimes the distant sound of the house, sometimes only the way the air seems to narrow slightly in the chest for a moment. And then comes the old gesture, almost imperceptible. The hand searches for something to adjust, a minimal alignment, an object slightly out of place without reason. It does not resolve anything, but it restores continuity, and that is enough for nothing to be seen directly. The 5 o'clock light is never quite the same from one day to the next. She hasn't noticed. She has been straightening things. Last winter there was a family dinner. Her daughter said something offhand, almost nothing, and she felt the familiar closing. Later, washing the dishes, her jaw was tight. She finished the dishes. It is a chain that has learned to feel like skin. What would it cost to let it arrive without finding work for her hands? Not to fix what it says, not to do anything with it at all. Just to sit in the 5 o'clock light and not move the salt shaker. The chain has no lock. There was never a lock, only the hand that kept holding, the belief that releasing it would leave nothing standing. What weight held long enough feels like structure. That is the only way the chain works. That is all it has ever been. She doesn't need to understand everything. She needs only to let experience arrive without immediately finding it a category. The light through the window will do the rest. It has been trying to, for years. She found the photograph last week, not looking for it, clearing a shelf, an old album she hadn't opened in years. The family, 20-some years ago. Everyone present, everyone smiling. She stood at the shelf and looked at it for a long time, not at any particular face. At the woman standing slightly left of center, holding the edge of someone's shoulder, already half turned towards something outside the frame. She stayed with it, without knowing what to do with it. She put the album back, but she didn't close it. You have not been weak. You have been doing what the chain required, managing, containing, moving through. And it worked. For a long time it worked. What it could not do is let experience say what it came to say. The suffering that returns is not evidence of damage. It is evidence of something still moving, still trying to complete itself. Ignorance is not permanent. It is not what you are. It is what happens when experience arrives often enough and is filed away before it can finish speaking. The moment it isn't filed, even once, the chain is no longer invisible. And a chain you can see no longer holds in quite the same way. The suffering arrives as it has always arrived. This time, nothing reorganizes itself around it. The light crosses the table. The hands remain where they are. For a moment there is no familiar movement toward what appears. Experience continues without being converted into something else. She is at the kitchen table. 5 o'clock. The light comes through the window the way it always does, gold, flat, reaching across the table surface toward the salt shaker. She has noticed, for the first time, that it is slightly different from yesterday. A different angle. She doesn't know why she notices it now. Her hands are on the table, flat, still. The salt shaker is where it always is. She is not straightening anything. The feeling comes, the old one, the one without a name. She does not move. She lets it arrive. It is still arriving when we leave her. Before you leave, notice where your hands go. Vesper Word, one aphorism, one story.